Praise the Lord, my beautiful, blessed souls. Back with another word. I want to get this one out because I don't know if I'm going to do it tomorrow or not. I'm going to take me a little break. But anyway, this is Numbers chapter 25. We're going to get into it because I want to get it done. And I got some other things to do. But anyway, beautiful, blessed souls, we are bruised and not broken. I hope this word will be a blessing to you. We are in Numbers chapter 25. So now, while Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. Remember, this is not good. These invited the people to sacrifice of their gods. And the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal and Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Now, they just got delivered, about to be delivered, rather, and this is what happens. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them in the sun before the Lord, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. This is punishable by death. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill those of the men of his men who have yoked themselves to Baal of Peor. And behold, one of the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family in the sight of Moses and in the sight of the whole congregation of the people of Israel, while they were weeping in the entrance of the tent of meeting. This is crazy. I don't know. This was. So when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear into his hand and went after the men of Israel into the chamber and pierced both of them, the man of Israel and the woman, through her belly. Thus the plague on the people of Israel was stopped. I'm going to get into that. Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. Wow. And the Lord said to Moses, this is that divination crap. Remember this. And the Lord said to Moses, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, has turned back my wrath from the people of Israel, and that he was jealous with my jealousy among them. So he defended God. So that I did not consume the people, meaning completely, of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore say, behold, I give to him my covenant of peace, and it shall be to him and his descendants after him, the covenant of the perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for his God and made atonement for the people of Israel. So the name of the slain man of Israel who was killed with the Midianite woman was Zemiri, the son of Salu, chief of a father's house belonging to the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, who was the tribal head of the father's house of Midian. The tribal's head of father's house of Midian. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, harass the Midianites and strike them down, for they have harassed you with their wiles, with which they beguiled you. And in the matter of Peor and the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of the chief of Midian, the sister who was killed on the day of the plague, an account of Peor. So we're going to get into this because this was just a lot. As we can see, they done angered God after he just blessed them, after they was about to be cursed. We are going to get into this because this is very, very symbolical and it is deep. So now, Israel, having escaped the curse of Balaam, here sustains a great deal of damage and reproach by the counsel of Balaam, who it seems before he left Balak, put him into a more effectual way than that which Balak thought of, to separate between the Israelites and their God. So he came up with a better plan. So the Lord will not be prevailed with by Balaam's charms to ruin them. Right. So try if they would not be prevailed by the charms of the daughters of Moabite to ruin themselves. So this was a straight attack sent. None are more fatally bewitched than those that are bewitched by their own lusts, right? Their own desires. So here is the sin of Israel. They were enticed by the daughters of Moab, both to whoredom and to idolatry. The punishment of this sin by the hand of the magistrate and by the immediate hand of God. The pious zeal of Phinehas in slaying Zemiri and Cosbi, two impudent sinners, God's commendation of the zeal of Phinehas, and enmity put between Israelites and the Midianites, the attempt is as at first between the woman and the serpent. So that was the symbolism. But we're going to get into this because this just had a lot going on. And we are getting into this because this was just a lot. And the symbolisms of it just had a lot of meaning to it. Basically, it's self-sabotage, and this is what happens because remember, Satan is he watches, he monitors, and this is why he's very cunning. He has plenty of time. He'll wait it out. He'll tire you out. This is his job. So when we think about how this operates, this whole operation, he studies and monitors us to watch every single thing. And this is what his diviners do. They're always watching. He's a legalist. So they're watching to catch you slipping up, doing something that you're not supposed to do. Any little accusation that they could form against you to have a reason to have open door to curse you. So, a full layered generational breakdown for us. This is Numbers 25 is one of the most pivotal turning point chapters in the wilderness narrative. After the blessing in Numbers 23 and 24, after God publicly declared Israel uncursable, the enemy changes his strategy. We will find this and see this all of the time. This is going to be, like I said, this is the self-sabotage. This is the slave mentality. This is the still need healing, deliverance, and restoration in the mind. This is the old cycles, patterns coming back. This is what this is. If he cannot curse them from the outside, he tries to corrupt them from the inside. No better way. This is why putting on the helmet and all that is wonderful, as long as the inside is already clean, because putting on the helmet only contains what's already in there. It protects what's outside, but it contains what's in. So this chapter is architecture of internal sabotage, seduction, and identity collapse, and the fierce restoration that follows. So here we're going to see exactly how this ties directly into everything we've been studying about so far. One is the open doors, which gave the legal ground. Identity is an issue, generational alignment, blessings versus curses. So let's break it down in the layered structure way that we have. One, Israel camps at Shittim. Moabite and Midianite women invite Israel into, what is it? Sexual immorality, idolatry, covenant betrayal. This leads, meaning betraying God. This leads to Israel joining Baal and of Peor, a spiritual breach, a deadly plague. Phinehas stepping in with zeal to stop the collapse. This is the internal failure that the external curse could not accomplish, meaning he tried to curse them from the outside, and this is what happens. So if he can't get you on the outside, he'll mess with you on the inside. Now, emotional and spiritual architecture. See, the enemy strategy shifted. You cannot curse them, so then seduce them. Why? With things that they like. And this is how this happened. This is a pattern. This is one of the patterns that he uses. If the enemy cannot curse you, he tries to distract you. That's the number one thing. Send people, places, and things. If he cannot distract you, he tries to seduce you. If he cannot seduce you, he tries to confuse you, meaning your identity. If he cannot confuse you, he tries to get you to self-sabotage, meaning mess yourself up. So this chapter is a blueprint of self-inflicted curses through misalignment. Are we the weapons formed against ourselves that is causing ourselves not to prosper? Are we the reasons blocking our own selves? This could be from a lot of things, but we're going to get into it. Numbers 25 reveals how alignment determines whether blessing or curses manifest. Blessings require, remember, identity, covenant, alignment, obedience, and clarity. Curses require agreement, participation, open doors, identity confusion, generational alignment with the wrong pattern. Israel didn't get cursed from the outside. They opened the door from the inside. And this is the exact principle we asked about earlier. Now, when we think about these things and we look at everything that goes on in our lives, self-sabotage, meaning outsiders come in, bring a little something and help you sabotage. This could be your marriage. This could be your job. This could be your finances. This could be your children. This could be relationships, your spouses, with your spouse, with your children, whatever. Outside influence that comes along and dangles something and ruins it. But you do it to yourself. So pay attention. This has so many layers to it. Now, The Baal of Peor pattern. Baal worship always involves sexual immorality. Remember, you can be tempted. God doesn't tempt us, the devil does. But it's up to you to take the bait. So he can throw it out there, but that doesn't mean you have to take it. And he always going to give you something you like. So it's going to be a distraction and all of that first. So Baal worship always involves sexual immorality. What does that mean? A lot of sexual things, deviances that God strictly forbidden. Emotional seduction, spiritual compromise, identity distortion, covenant betrayal. It is the anti-identity spirit. Now remember, sexual immorality could be anything from bestiality to all kinds of other stuff. As we see these things still going on in this day and age. So it is, Baal worship is always about pulling you out of alignment, disconnecting you from covenant, confusing your identity, weakening your discernment, and creating legal grounds so the curse can land. This is why the curse can land in this chapter, not because God changed, but because Israel changed their mind, meaning their alignments. They changed what they were doing. Instead of walking upright, being in alignment, being obedient, and doing what they were told, now they sacrifice something. Phinehas, the turning point. Phinehas acts with clarity, zeal, covenant loyalty, identity, certainty. His action stops the plague, closes the open door, restores alignment, reestablishes covenant protection. There's always a ram in the bush. One thing about God, there's always a ram in the bush. There's always someone or something that's going to raise up. People place a thing that he will raise up to help restore the situation. Phinehas represents the cycle breaker in the generational line. This is what he is. He is the one who says this stops with me. He sees it, he understands it, and he does exactly what needs to be done. This is exactly the role you play when you step into your own lineage work, meaning you put a stop to it. You start doing the work that no one else wants to do, meaning going up against what is messing up the lineage, the bloodline, all of the curses, all of the spells, all of the this. All of the generational stuff that everyone else just had, saw it, and did not pay it no mind, just allowed it to be there. They didn't stop it. They didn't dare to, because it's a lot to do, and it's not an easy overnight thing. Emotional logic of the chapter. Israel emotional pattern. Curiosity always kills the cat. Attraction, seduction, compromise, confusion, collapse. Remember, even the garden. God's emotional pattern is grief, justice, covenant loyalty, and restoration. Phinehas' emotional pattern, righteous anger, clarity, courage, intervention, and restoration. He's the one that's going to help fix everything, just like Christ came, Moses. There was always somebody, somewhere that was going to raise up and do something. The architecture of how the curse landed. This chapter is the perfect example of the framework, which is 1, the open door. Israel opened the door through desire and distraction. 2 was legal ground. They participated in idolatry, giving the enemy a claim, meaning legal right. Authorization, alignment. They aligned with Moab's gods. The womb, their longing for belonging and acceptance made them vulnerable. This happens. This is why identity is so important, because being alone, going through your stuff, especially when you're going through this time. Remember, the wilderness season is a time of testing and all those things. Transition. So it can be a little, lonely. It can be a little, trying. Letting go of old things and grabbing new ones and learning how to do new things. Confusion, identity fog set in. They forgot who they were. Caught up in all of them. Acceptance, they accepted the rituals and the practices of Baal. Generational alignment, they repeated patterns of earlier generations who flirted with idolatry and lost. Identity collapses, they forgot their covenant identity, the root cause. This is why the plague could land. So in our comparative, we're going to see the layers. Emotional, Israel was seduced. Moabites, Midians, was manipulative. They manipulated them. God was grieved, and Phinehas was zealous about it. The strategy was to compromise Israel. This was from Midian, that they used seduction to compromise Israel, and it was to break the covenant with God. And this was Phinehas. He stepped in to intervene. Why? Because if he didn't stop it, the plague would have continued to kill everybody. So because he killed those other 2 that broke off the lineage, that broke it, that's why it stopped. Authority, Israel surrendered. Moabites, Midianites, they were illegitimate. God is absolute, and Phineas delegated, meaning he said it right. Outcome was the plague. That was for Israel. That was their obedience is better than sacrifice. Moab's, Midian's, their temporary victory, but then God did justice, and then it was restoration. Now, what this chapter means for the generational curse breakers is simply this. One, it teaches that the enemy cannot curse you, but he can tempt you to curse yourself. Identity confusion is more dangerous than external attacks, because this is the mind. This is the battlefield of the mind here. Getting you to go back into these old patterns is easy when you're just trying to come out. This is why being around people, places, and things when you're trying to get yourself together is not a good idea. That's why God removes people, places, and things, secludes you, so he can do the work in you to take out what is not needed or what is not of him, and to put in what is. Seduction is a strategy to break alignment. This is one of the ways. Generational cycles repeat easily unless someone intervenes, right? Restoration requires clarity, courage, decisive action. One person can stop a whole generational collapse, right, when they step in and pick up the cross. Phineas is the model of a lineage restorer, the one who steps in when everyone else is drifting. That's the role, we're stepping into. So now I looked up Shittim, whoring, and Moabites. So now Shittim and the phrase whoring with the Moabites in a way that is historically accurate, spiritually and emotionally intelligent. This is one of the most misunderstood passages. So we're going to look into it. We're going to break it down. What is Shittim? Shittim, also called Abel Shittim, is Israel's final campsite before entering the promised land. So this is the final test. Located east of the Jordan River, a place whose names mean acacia trees. But symbolically, Shittim becomes the place of eternal failure. The place where Israel's identity was tested, the place where blessing was almost forfeited. This is the final test before the promise. Shittim is the threshold, the last stop before destiny, and thresholds always expose what is unresolved. This is what the devil does. This is how the enemy attacks you. Why? They wait until that last moment to get that last little bit in. Why? Because they want to stop you when it's right there. And if you don't act, you can miss a whole lineage, a whole cycle. Years can go by before this can be fixed. What does whoring with the Moabites mean? The phrase comes from the older English translations. It is not referring to prostitution in the modern sense, but somewhat. It means Israel entered sexual relationships with Moabite women. These relationships were tied to idolatrous rituals. This is why, because the intimacy was used as a tool of spiritual seduction. Israel joined Moab in worship practices involving Baal. In biblical language, this is whoring is a metaphor for covenant betrayal, spiritual unfaithfulness, abandoning God for another deity. Remember, the church is God's bride. It is covenant language, not derogatory language towards women, but this issue is Israel's disloyalty, not the ethnicity of the Moabites. It is the disloyalty. So they were unfaithful to God. Why Moabite women? Remember, God had already laid out a lot of things. Idolatry was one of them. He just delivered them from that. It was the same people that was doing these idolatrous worships that he delivered them from out of Egypt. Those were the same people that enslaved them. So why would you go back into doing these type of things? See? Slave mentality. They haven't gotten healed yet. And because they're not healed yet, their mind is still doing create the same patterns and cycles. They're still used to it, their thought system. So, why Moabite women? This was not random. This was a strategic attack. Moab and Midian they did emotional seduction, relational intimacy, ritualized sexuality, hospitality mixed with idolatry as a strategic weapon. This was a planned spiritual attack, not a spontaneous moral failure. We look at our lives, we'll see these. Balaam from the previous chapters advised Balak, if you cannot curse them, corrupt them. So the Moabite women were part of a political and spiritual strategy to break Israel's covenant alignment. That's just like being married and then, a man and woman seeing someone else straying from their marriage. It's the same thing. Although the temptation was there, you didn't have to take it. But because you took it, it led to all this other stuff. But that was either God, Satan, tested to see where was the marriage? Where was the loyalty? Where was the faithfulness at? Where was it? Because if that's all it takes you to get distracted, this is what this is about. So now this is one of the, metaphors I'll use. The spiritual architecture behind it. The moment reveals a pattern we've been tracing. If the enemy cannot curse you externally, he tries to seduce you internally. The seduction at Shittim targeted identity, loyalty, covenant, clarity, boundaries, generational destiny. But remember, he can entice you or seduce you in a numerous of ways. If you're a person who likes money, he'll bring, a deal your way. If you like power, if you like fame, whatever it is that your thing is, this would be what he would try you with. This would be what he would send your way. Why? Because it's got to be something you like. Temptation is not just something that, no, it's something you like and desire. This is why it's sent to you. Because it's sent to tempt you. Because he knows that you like it. To see if you're going to fall for the bait and the trap. So, this is what this is about. So, the seduction in Shittim is targeted identity, loyalty, right? Covenant. Your identity of who are you? Are you a loyal person or are you not? Clarity, boundaries. Are you just, no self-control? And generational destiny. This is why the language is so strong. It describes a spiritual affair, not merely a physical one. Why this was so dangerous? Because the relationships were tied to worship of Baal, rituals, sacrifices, covenant-breaking acts, spiritual allegiance shifts, and this created open doors, legal ground, identity confusion, generational alignment with idolatry. Meaning, because remember, when you start having sex and sleeping with people, you're tied to them. So now you're legally binding yourself to another God. Okay? And God told you specifically not to do those type of things. Everything, okay. This is the moment where the curse could land, not because God changed, but because Israel changed alignment. Now, the emotional logic, they were curious, flattered, seduced, spiritually confused, disconnected from identity. Yeah, but no. Moab was strategic, manipulative, using intimacy as influence. So we say he loves to use the things that are right there. Your husband, your family, your friends, he'll use your job, education, your own self against you. This is what happens. So we got to pay attention to these things. God grieved. He grieved. He protected and was responding to covenant betrayal. Phinehas, clear, courageous, restoring the alignment. Why Shittim matters for generational breakers? Shittim is a place where blessing meets temptation, identity meets seduction, destiny meets distraction, covenant meets compromise. It is the final test before your breakthrough. So, right before you're about to get a breakthrough, all hell's going to break loose. That's what that's about. Just to see if you're going to continue on the way that you have. And if not, this is the problem. So every generational cycle breaker faces a Shittim moment. The moment where the old pattern tries to what? Pull you back. The moment where seduction tries to replace clarity. The moment where identity is challenged. The moment where alignment determines destiny. So we've been walking through this threshold, and this is the mirrors, that architecture. Now, we're going to talk about the gods, meaning Baal, Peor, and what type of stuff they were into. So now, what exactly were the Moabites doing? Meaning the Baal worship, Peor. What did they eat? What did they bow to? What types of worship were involved? So, this is spiritual, emotional, ritual detail into this. 1, who is Baal, Peor? Baal, meaning Lord, Master, Peor, a mountain or a region in Moab. So this is on some type of high place. This is what goes on in ritualistic situations, divination, all this type of thing. So Baal, Peor, means the Baal of Peor, meaning the Lord and Master of the mountain, this mountaintop or region, high region. A local manifestation of Baal, the deity. Baal worship always involved fertility rituals, sexual rites, ritual meals, sacrifices, bowing, prostration, covenant-like ceremonies. Baal is the god of storms, fertility, agriculture, productivity, sexual power, life and death cycles. This is why the worship was so sensual and emotional and manipulative. So what did they do? They ate. What did Israel eat? They were inviting the people to Israel. They invited the people of Israel to sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate. This refers to ritual meals eaten after sacrifices. These meals include meat offered to Baal, wine used in fertility rites, food eaten as part of a covenant meal. Symbolic participation in Baal's blessing. Eating the meal meant agreement, participation, alignment, accepting of Baal's authority. In the ancient world, eating sacrificial meal was a spiritual contract. This is what this is about. These altars, covenants, and contracts, these vows mean a lot. This is why Paul later says in 1 Corinthians 10 that eating a pagan altar is participation with demons, meaning this is you legally participating. That's when we talk about these altars and we talk about these all these people who claim that they're so, having a God or worshiping God. They're not worshiping the God we worship, because they would not be on the altars that they're on. You can't be on, you either on one or the other. There's no in between with this. So they bowed down. What did bowing mean? Bowing was not casual. It meant submission, allegiance, covenant loyalty, recognition of Baal as a spiritual authority. This is what it means. Bowing was the physical sign of spiritual agreement. It was the moment the curse could land, because Israel authorized a different God. Types of worship at Baal Peor. This was the architecture becomes clear. 4 major components. Ritual, sexuality. This was the core of Baal worship. It included ritual intercourse, fertility rites, symbolic reenactments of Baal's myths, sexual acts meant to activate blessing. And this is why the Moabite women were used. It was a religious strategy, not random immorality. So they were sent specifically. Hint, 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 you men who can't keep it up. Sex was the doorway to spiritual alignment. Now, sacrificial meals. These meals sealed covenants, symbolized participation, created spiritual agreement, were a part of the worship cycle. Eating means joining the worship. Bowing means prostration. This was the act of giving allegiance, acknowledging Baal's authority, entering the covenant with them. Bowing is always a covenant language in scripture. It means to bow into the vow, bowing to the altar, bowing to the covenant, whatever it is, to the person. This is what this is. Offerings and rituals. These include animal sacrifices, wine libations, incense, ritual chants, symbolic acts tied to fertility. Baal worship was sensory, emotional, and seductive. Why this was so dangerous? Because Baal worship wasn't just sin, it was covenantal replacement. Israel didn't just behave badly. They ate at another God's table, bowed to another God, participated in another covenant, aligned with another spiritual authority, accepted another identity. This is why the plague could land, and they didn't get cursed from the outside. They opened the door from the inside. This is why we say when you are dealing with certain situations, people on the outside don't know nothing unless somebody on the inside was the culprit. Why? Because there's no way in the world someone just could come. No, unless someone was working with them on the inside. So the spiritual architecture is eating the covenant meal and then the agreement. Bowing meaning allegiance and authorization. Sexual rites meaning ritual union, and it meant identity fusion. Sacrifices meant worship, meaning alignment. Participation means joining Baal's story, legal ground. So when we see these people talking about, they represent God. No, the God they represent is the altar that they standing upon. They tell you one thing, that's not what it is about. Because clearly there's certain things that our God you cannot do and then go over there, as we can see. I don't care what artist there is. I don't care who they are, where they are, and what they are doing. Please pay attention to all of what goes on. Because while they sitting here talking about they worship the God, they do not worship the God you worship. I can promise you that. Well, at least not the one I worship. This is the exact framework we've been mapping. That means any other God outside of Jesus Christ, he's the way, the truth, and the light, is not. So that just lets you know right there. Okay, open doors, legal ground, authorized alignment, identity, confusion, generational balance. This is how, so in 1 minute, things are going one way, then they're going another way. This is how it is. Yoked to Baal and Peor. What it means to be spiritually yoked. This is what the phrase of it means. Loaded spiritual precise statements. Entire Torah. When the scripture says Israel was yoked to Baal Peor, describing something far deeper than casual sin. This is covenant language, identity language, and alignment language. The exact architecture we've been mapping. Let's break it down. What does yoke mean? Because remember, be not unequally yoked, meaning do not yoke yourself, tie yourself, bind yourself, intertwine yourself, mingle with who? People who are not yoked with you, not headed in the same direction, not with you. If they're not aligned with your God, they are at another God. This is what this is about. A yoke is a wooden bar that binds two animals together, a device that forces two beings to move in the same direction. So this is why people can say, oh no, because if you're dealing with this and you're dealing with these other altars, you're yoked to it. So if you're yoked to it, because remember, no one's putting a gun to your head for you to participate. So if you're an active, willing participant, then that means you bowed, you ate, you sacrificed, you worked, you're in alignment, right? So if that's the case, then that means you are tied to that God. That means you cannot serve two masters. You will have one or the other. That's it. A symbol of bondage is partnership or shared destiny. To be yoked spiritually means joined, bound, aligned, partnered, moving under the same authority. A yoke is not casual. A yoke is binding. What does it mean to be yoked to Baal Pure? It means Israel entered a spiritual partnership with Baal, accepted Baal's authority, aligned with Baal's rituals, participated in Baal's covenant system, took on Baal's identity markers, joined Baal's history, meaning story. This is why the language is so strong. It's describing covenant betrayal, not just moral failure. They didn't just sin, they switched yokes, meaning switched sides. So that's if you're married and you cheat and you're over there instead over here with your wife. There's no back and forth. No. No. The yoke formed through your actions. That's how it formed. Eating the sacrificial meal, this was covenant meal, spiritual agreement. Bowing down, this was allegiance, spiritual submission. Sexual rights, this was a ritual union, identity fusion, meaning when two people have sex, that's what that's about. It's a covenant. Participation in Baal's worship, this was alignment, spiritual authorization in each action, tighten the yoke. Yes, because once you have sex, you're yoked, you become one. The two become one, remember. So they became one with who? With Baal, who is the enemy of God. That's Satan. That's his people. What do you mean? So the spiritual architecture of the yoke, being yoked means Israel gave Baal legal ground, open doors, authorized alignment, identity access, and generational influence. This is the exact framework. So this is the yoke is the mechanism by which the curse could land, not because God cursed them, but because they align with a different spiritual authority. They self-sabotaged. They did. They self-sabotaged themselves. Why Baal Pure specifically? Well, Baal Pure worship was designed to seduce, confuse, emotionally disarm, spiritually bind, create covenant replacement. And it was used through ritual meals, sexual rites, emotional intimacy, bowing, prostration, and sacrifices. This was not random, and it was strategic spiritual attack, entanglement for them. The yoke as identity collapse. The yoke always affects identity. To be yoked to Baal Pure meant Israel forgot who they were. They accepted a false identity, meaning forgot whose they were and who they belonged to. They stepped out of covenant alignment. They took on the emotional, spiritual patterns of Baal worship. This is why the plague could land, and identity determines spiritual immunity. Meaning, if you belong to God, he protects his own. And if you do not, that's a problem. So the generational layer, a yoke is generational unless broken. Being yoked to Baal Pure meant the pattern could pass down in the family bloodline. Remember, this is all about becoming one. The identity confusion could repeat, right? The alignment could echo through the lineage, right? The curse is going to continue. It could attach through the agreement. This is why they had to be killed. Why? To stop it from going on down the bloodline. This is why Phineas' intervention was so crucial. He broke the yoke before it became generational, meaning it was just them, but it would continue throughout the lineage, meaning their children would still be cursed because of this one act. Now, the Phineas moment. Phineas saw the yoke forming, understood the spiritual architecture, so he acted decisively, quickly, restored the covenant and alignment, closed the open door, stopped the generational collapse, meaning completely tainted the bloodline. And he is the archetype of the cycle breaker, exactly the role we've been stepping into. Summaries again. Here's the table. The yoke, meaning is the concept. The meaning is binding partnership. Effect was shared destiny. Yoke to Baal Pure, joined to another spiritual authority. Identity collapse, meaning from God. Eating covenant meal agreement. Bowing allegiance authorization to who? To another God, meaning becoming one sexually, emotionally, physically, everything with another guy. Sexual rights, ritual union, identity fusion, right? When you're procreating, you make babies how? By having sex, and you procreate another whole generation, either of blessings or curses, right? Or in between. Participation, alignment, and legal ground. Phineas, intervention, yoke broken. Now, I'm going to look at the plague because I wanted to look at the plague. Now, the sharpest turning point in the entire wilderness narrative was when we mentioned Phineas, the chiefs, the Midianite woman, in the plague. We're pointing right directly at the core event that stopped Israel's collapse and restored covenant alignment. Let's break it down. The situation. Israel's in full collapse. Israel has one, joined to Moabites and Midianite women, eaten sacrificial meals, bowed to Baal Peor, entered into ritual sexual worship, broke covenant. Now, the sad part is they was blatantly doing it. They had no regard. This is what this is about. Because at the time, remember, the guy was bringing the woman in while Moses and them were there. Why would they do that? I don't know. Just total disrespect, and you'll see that from time to time in life, right? This creates open door, legal ground, authorized alignment, identity confusion, generational vulnerability. Because this is a plague breaks out among the people, this plague is not random. It is the spiritual consequences of Israel's switching yokes. Why? They were no longer blessed. Why? They weren't obedient. They were cursed because they were disobedient. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Now we look at this and we say to ourselves, them sleeping around, them cheating on God, them going to do something else, them being able to actually procreate another lineage of cursed generations. See? God is trying to save them from themselves. The chief leaders and Phineas are weeping at the tent. The leaders of Israel, the chiefs, meaning these are people who are in charge. They were in the heads, and they just allowed this foolishness to go on. And this is why they was judged so harshly, because if the head is acting up, the rest is going to. This is why in the family line, the man, the priest, is supposed to be the head, and he's supposed to lead. But the problem with the leading is, can he lead? How will he lead? And is he leading from his way, the world way, Satan's way, or God's way? So this has a lot of significance. And then you wonder why the families are cursed. They're cursed. Why? Because there's no priest, there's no head. He's not there to cover them, protect them. He's not there to have interaction with them. He's not there to literally be a part of their lives, to promote blessings over them. So what does he do when he leaves? He leaves curses. Why? His absence, and this is what parents do, their actions or being there or not, they can leave blessings and or curses upon your life, depending on what is going on. And they're the ones to do it because they're the closest. They're in your bloodline. So this is, Numbers 25 says, leaders of Israel, the chiefs, are gathered at the entrance of the tent of meeting, weeping. Why? Because they see the collapse. They saw it. They feel powerless. Ooh, excuse me. They recognize the covenant breach. They know the plague is spreading. They don't know how to stop it. But this is leadership and paralysis, meaning they stood still. They did nothing. Grief without reaction or action. They're emotionally aware but spiritually immobilized. They didn't do anything. And this is where you need leaders who are going to work, who are going to move. Can you lead is the question, not just wanting the position. Can you handle the job? The Midianite woman and the Israelite man. While the chiefs are weeping, something shocking happens. An Israelite man brings a Midianite woman into his tent in full view of Moses and the leaders. This is total, utmost disrespect. So what they got, remember, it's sad, but he got what he got, because this is like bringing a whole whore into the house of your wife and your family and in front of them like it's nothing, and not expecting no backlash from it. The total disrespect. So this is not just immorality, it is an actual ritual act, a public declaration, a spiritual alignment, a covenant with Baal Peor, a direct challenge to God's authority. And how did he act? This tightens the yoke with Baal Peor. It is the moment the plague intensifies. Why? Because God is angry, and his response was the plague and they die. Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, sees what is happening. So he rises and takes a spear, enters the man's chamber, stops the ritual act, meaning breaks the alignment, closes the open door. By what? He killed them, sacrifice. His action is not about violence, it's about intervention. He interrupts the ritual, the covenant with Baal, the generational collapse, the spiritual contagion. Phinehas acts where the chiefs froze. He became the cycle breaker, meaning they weren't fit to lead. He's more of a leader. Just because folks have the titles does not mean they can handle the position. Don't let that go over your head. And the ones who don't be more qualified sometimes, but then they don't want to be bothered. It's funny. The plague stops. Scripture says, then the plague was stopped. Why? Because the ritual was interrupted, the alignment was broken, the yoke was severed, the covenant breach was addressed, and the spiritual door was closed. Phinehas' action restored everything: the identity, alignment, covenant, loyalty, spiritual order. This is why God later says, Phinehas turned back my wrath and gives him a covenant of peace. Why? Because even the chiefs, they didn't do this themselves. And they were the ones in charge, and they should have been handling their people. Okay, element, chiefs weeping, awareness without action, effect, leadership paralysis, meaning they don't do nothing. We see that a lot. Midianite women, ritual seduction, covenant replacement is the effect. Israelite man, public alignment with Baal, legal ground, effect. Phinehas' zeal and clarity breaks the yoke. Plague, consequences of alignment, spiritual contagion. The plague stops, alignment restored, covenant protection returns. So why this matters for generation curse? Because Phinehas represented decisive clarity, identity, certainty, covenant, loyalty, the courage to interrupt generational collapse. The chiefs represent grief, awareness, paralysis. The Israelite man represents identity, confusion, seduction, and alignment with destructive patterns. Exactly. The Midianite woman represents the seductive strategy, the emotional, spiritual entanglement, the ritual doorway. The plague represents the consequences of misalignment, the spiritual fallout of covenant betrayal. So I looked up where the chief hanging. The chiefs hang is Simeonites. So this part is all the key figures: Baal, Peor, and Christ as the chief of Simeonites, Zeri, and Salu, Cosby, the daughter. Each one reveals a layer of the spiritual, emotional relationship, generational architecture. Let's break it down clearly, deeply, and with the structure we like. So the chiefs hanging, what actually happened in Numbers 25 and 4, God tells Moses, take the chiefs of the people and hang them before the Lord. This does not mean the very chief was guilty. It means the leaders of the tribes were held responsible for failing to guard the people, failing to intervene, allowing the seduction to spread, and leadership paralysis at the time meeting. Exactly. Hanging here means public exposure to modern execution methods. It was a public judgment to stop the plague, break the spiritual contagion, and restore order. Show that leadership must be a protected covenant. The chiefs represent failed leadership. Aware equals that time frame equals aware, grieving, but inactive. The Simeonites, the tribe of the son of the collapse. Zimri, the man who brought the Midianite woman into his tent, was a Simeonite prince. This means the tribe of Simeon was deeply entangled. The seduction had reached the leadership levels, right? The collapse was not random. The tribe's identity was compromised. Later in the census, Simeon's numbers dropped dramatically, the largest decline of any tribe, showing how deeply the plague hit them. Simeon represents generational fatality, a tribe historically associated with impulsiveness, violence, and stability. Okay, Zimri and son of Salu, the Israelite man. Zimri is a name because he represents public defiance, identity collapse, alignment with Baal, Peor, leadership corruption. He was not a random man. He was a prince, a leader, and he acted as so. Now, what happens with this? Okay. Zimri is son of the Israelite man. His name is because it represents Public defiance, identity collapse, alignment with Baal Peor, leadership corruption. He was not a random man. He was a prince, a leader. His act was ritual, intentional, covenantal, spiritual, and symbolic. He brought Cosby into the tent in front of Moses and the chiefs while they were weeping. This is the moment when the yoke with Baal Peor became public and generational. Cosby, daughter of Zur, the Midianite woman. Cosby named because she was not a random woman. She was the daughter of Zur, the Midianite king, a political figure, a ritual participant, a part of the seduction strategy. Her presence shows this was coordinated, this was spiritual warfare, this was political manipulation, this was covenantal replacement. Remember all of those, because remember that we're dealing with those now. Cosby represents the embodied strategy of Baal Peor: seduction, emotional entanglement, ritual and sexuality and identity confusion. This is the symbol of the yoke Israel was talking about. Okay, Zur, a Midianite king. Zur was one of the 5 Midianite kings later killed in Numbers 23. His daughter Cosby was a priestess level figure, a political emissary, a ritual partner, a strategic agent. Zur represents the architecture of the seduction, the political power behind the spiritual attack, the generational enemy of Israel. This was not random immorality. This was the state-sponsored spiritual warfare. Phineas, the turning point. Phineas sees the church paralyzed, the plague breaking or spreading, the covenant collapsing, and the ritual act continuing. He intervenes, breaks the ritual, severs the yoke, stops the plague, restores alignment. God says, turn back. Phineas turned back my wrath and was zealous with my zeal. He receives a covenant of peace, receives a lasting priesthood. Phineas is the cycle breaker. So now that we see all of this, remember the chiefs, there was their leadership, paralyzed, grieving, exposed, corrected. Simeonite tribe of instability, deeply entangled, severely seduced or reduced. God reduced the numbers. Zimri, Israelite prince, public covenant betrayal, removed. Salu, Zimri's father, Simeonite leader, the lineage implicated. Cosby, Midianite princess, ritual seduction, and removed. Phineas Zur, Midianite king, Peor, priest. Architecture of seduction and breaks the yoke, later judge and stops the plague. Oh, crap. This is good. Okay, so we see a lot of this. A lot has gone on. Okay, when we talk about wiles, what it really means. Subtle strategy designed to deceive, seduce, or manipulate in scripture. Wiles refers to calculated tactics. Emotional meaning traps, emotional manipulation, psychological seduction, spiritual traps, right? Strategic enticement, slow erosion of clarity. Wiles are not direct attacks, but they are indirect, soft attack, attractive and disarming. Wiles work by lowering discernment, bypassing defenses, appealing to desire, creating emotional connection, disguising danger as pleasure. This is exactly what the Moab and Midianites used. That's just like, when men lie to you and try to, or women, it could be either or. But, beguile, what it really means, that's the manipulation, that's the, all of that. Beguile, meaning deceive through charm, right? Seduction or emotional influence. It is not a force, it is persuasion. To be beguiled means your perception is altered, your clarity is softened, your boundaries are blurred, your identity is confused, your emotions override your discernment. Beguilement is identity fraud created through emotional or sensual influence. This is the same word used for when even Genesis and Samson with Delilah, Israel with Baal Peor, always involves charm, seduction, emotional entanglement, spiritual misdirection. How wiles beguilement worked about? Well, Moab and Midian didn't attack Israel with armies. They attacked Israel with wiles. Their strategy, it works. Send a woman of status, use hospitality, use emotional warmth, use rituals, meals, use sensuality, use relational intimacy, use spiritual curiosity. Israel wasn't forced, Israel was beguiled, right? They went along with it. The seduction worked because it appealed to the desires, soothed insecurities, often belonging, created emotional connection, disguised as spiritual danger. Okay, the architecture of wiles and beguilement. I think y'all pretty much understand. Well, wiles is strategic, meaning seduction, lowers discernment. Beguile meaning emotionally deceive, identity confusion. Seduction means emotional plus sensual pull equals open doors. Is effect, ritual meals, covenant participation, meaning effect, legal ground. Charms, emotional discernment. Effect, weakens boundaries. Intimacy, false belonging, alignment shift, idolatry, covenant replacement, yoke forms. Why these words matter? This is exactly the mechanism of how Israel yokes are bound. While beguilement are subtle patterns, they repeat in families, they repeat in relationships, they repeat in spiritual cycles, including your thoughts, habit, and patterns. They repeat in identity struggles. They are the forces that pull people off course, confuse identity, create emotional entanglements, open generational doors, weaken boundaries, and distort discernment. This is why Numbers 25 is so important. It shows how seduction, not force, breaks alignment. Okay, Phineas contrast. Where Israel was beguiled, Phineas was clear, grounded, aligned, decisive, and identity anchored. He wasn't moved by wiles. He wasn't beguiled. He saw through seduction. He represents the cycle breaker who sees the pattern, interrupts the pattern, restores alignment, closes the door, stops the generational collapse. Well, I hope this was a good word. It just lets us see, hear, and know a lot about what is going on and how we ourselves see these things pop up in every aspect of our lives. It's so simple and easy to be beguiled or wild if and when you're not paying attention. If you don't know that there is an enemy and they're seeking to steal, kill, and destroy you, if you're not seeing it, they want to lie, steal, take, and cover from you. You need to understand these things. The enemy will have you to where you don't even know you're doing what you're doing until you knee deep in it, because that's what the bewitchment, the beguilement comes from. This is what that sorcery and all of that divination and all that extra, but it's subtle because it's just simply manipulating the person, lying to them, controlling them, getting the outcomes that you want by doing other little things that allow them to come on in. So that's all that's about. But when you see it, know it, be thankful for it. It's a great lesson. I think it shows how people, even when it comes to, when we think about like suicide and people internalize and they, destroy themselves because of what's going on and not even paying it no attention as to what they're doing. They gotta have identity issues to hate themselves or to not like themselves. But these things go, further than that. But this is just a part of the cycles. But we have to look at them for what they are, and when we look at this divination, look at it from what it is in God's point of view, and He does not like it, nor does He love it at all, and it doesn't want us involved with it because, as you can see, it causes more harm than actually good. But anyway, this was kind of long. I hope you get the gist of it. I'm getting a little sleepy. But yeah, this is, it just shows how folks are, when you're still out there, you haven't been healed, delivered, or restored, and you're walking. This is how it is, because you go through a lot in silence. But these are situations that could have been avoided because they could have said no, And it goes back in pride and ego and desires and want and being selfish, a lot. But anyway, I'm going to let this one go. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I hope that this message was a blessing to somebody. This is self-destruction at its finest. This is the weapons of our warfare, not carnal, but this is also no weapon formed against us shall prosper. But are we the weapon forming against ourselves? Okay? Because sometimes it's not Satan, it's not nobody else. Sometimes it's us. We're just making the wrong decisions, doing the wrong things, whatever have you. That's what that boils down to. So if they hadn't did what they did, they wouldn't have been in this position. But they got to take accountability for their responsibility for their part that they play. So anyway, we're bruised and not broken. I hope that this word was a blessing to someone. And until the next one, be blessed. Like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. And if you like, you can send me some Cash App or whatever if you just feel led to be a blessing to myself and my ministry. But other than that, be blessed. Love you guys.